this is kind of breaking news, actually. We've got government looking at tougher outdoor smoking rules. This morning, this was just speculation, but as we go on air, this is actually, the government have confirmed that this is what they're trying to do. They want to ban smoking even further than it's already banned.
So just a quick summary. A few years ago, was it the Conservatives that banned smoking in pubs?
They banned smoking in enclosed public places and workplaces.
Yeah. So
in 2007 in Northern Ireland.
Oh, that was Labour then, right? Yeah. So yeah, you could normally, in the before times that I'm old enough to remember, you would go into a pub and it'd be, it'd stink of tobacco because everyone's smoking in there. And I could understand the reason for banning it inside the pubs. Like, okay, but if only half the people in the pub smoke or whatever, that's a lot of people who would otherwise want to go in, who don't want to go in because it isn't pleasant. So go outside and have a cigarette. Okay, fair enough. I don't like it, but I can understand it.
But even then, I don't understand it. I've never smoked cigarettes, at least. Never.
Sure.
Never even tried one. However, it's people's right to choose to smoke or not. And it's surely the venue's right to choose whether they want people to smoke in their venue or not.
Now, that was always my opinion on it.
Right.
Well, can we not have smoking and non-smoking pubs and let the market decide what people
Absolutely.
want? Not according to the Labour government, of course. It has to be one rule for everyone. But this is preposterous. Like, okay, well, it was sold. Okay, well, it's bad for us. Blah blah blah. Yeah, okay, in an enclosed environment, sure. But I'm outdoors now.
Right.
So what are the rules they're looking to change in terms of outdoors?
This is what they're looking to change.
Okay.
Ban smoking in pub gardens, outside nightclubs, restaurant terraces, outside sports stadiums, children's parks, pavements by universities and hospitals, and shisha bars.
The last one is the confusing one.
Right. How can you ban smoking in a shisha bar?
But they just don't want you to have fun.
Yeah.
They're targeting the fun aspects of life.
People who enjoy smoking, or people who are addicted to smoking, have to find spaces outdoor to smoke because they're not allowed to smoke indoors now. And now they're saying they're going to ban the outdoor spaces too.
I have really mixed feelings on this.
Right. I thought you might. I do.
Professional. So I freaking hate smoking like yourself. I've never tried a cigarette, was never even remotely tempted. It smells disgusting. It does have a serious secondhand effect. So it's not something that's just as simple as it only affects the user, that is for sure. At the same time, I have strong libertarian instincts and genuine concerns about increasing. Maybe if this was a government that I was totally convinced genuinely cares about the population and their well-being and their health, then I'd see something more like this and be more, okay, fair enough. Maybe it's a bit heavy-handed, but they genuinely care about people, but I know they genuinely do not.
Yeah.
And
Why?
so
What do you think the motivation is behind this?
just increased control. Honestly, increased control. I just think a government as an entity, I don't know how many times I had this conversation with people from 2020 to 2022.
Yeah.
Multiple aspects. The first thing is that if the government truly cared about public health, the things that they would be targeting and restriction, if they were going to use their power, would be very different. The mandates would be rather different to what they're targeting. And so I just think as a government in general, it doesn't even matter the country. Its job is to grow and to control things. And governments always tend to increase in size and scope, just like companies are always seeking to increase their profits, especially if they're public companies. So if someone's wondering, why is that company doing that thing? It's probably to make more money. Yeah. Pretty good guess. When a government is doing something, it's normally to gain or control people more.
Yeah.
And the only thing that reasonable people will trade their freedom and liberty for is a sense of safety and security. And so if you can sell something under the banner of, well, it's for your own good, it's for your health, it's for public health, then people are generally going to fall in line because, as I bared the brunt of a lot for many years, who wants to be the person who is standing against public health in the way people perceive it? It's not a fun position to be in.
No, I'm not a libertarian, but I'm a conservative. But I think we share the same perspective here that a government should be small, should protect the borders, provide a basic safety net. But other than that, it should keep its hands out of our pockets and out of our lives.
I'm not a full libertarian either. I sit somewhere. I'm a sort of libertarian-leaning conservative or conservative-leaning libertarian, however someone wants to put it.
There are valuable aspects to libertarianism.
Yeah.
I'm not a libertarian.
No, it can go too far. And, I've really seen this. I travel all the time, as you guys know. So I've been to so many countries and so many cities, and you have the things that are theoretical and which might sound, okay, that sort of makes sense. Like a true libertarian position is that decriminalize all drugs.
It's hardcore, yeah.
I have lived in places where drugs, even including alcohol, are totally criminalized. Right? I grew up in Saudi Arabia. I now live in the UAE. It freaking works.
I bet it
works.
does.
It works.
What does it do? Destroy your fun?
Yes,
No.
but it also means that you don't have drug addicts and alcoholics.
Yeah, have you been to San Francisco? Have you been to LA?
Yes.
Have you been?
But that's not alcohol, is it?
No, that's not. That one's not alcohol. But I'm talking about the full
The
full
full
libertarian
extreme
idea of
stuff.
decriminalize all drugs, which on paper I can understand the argument of, the government shouldn't be telling you what to put in your body and what, whether if you want to smoke, if you want to drink, whatever. And someone can easily take that further to cannabis, to cocaine, to heroin. You can take it wherever you want. And then you see the effects of it in real time. And it's like, yeah, okay, this is horrible. I remember literally going from, you can fly direct between Dubai and San Francisco. So I remember last year after I did my interview with Elon, so I was literally in San Francisco for a few days, walking around the Tenderloin, downtown, seeing it, smelling it, everything, right? Not for the first time either.
Yeah.
And then 24 hours later, I'm in Dubai and everything is completely clean and pristine and like all of this. And it's like, okay, on paper, this is more authoritarian, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And that is more libertarian. People on paper in certain ways have more freedom, but at the same time, people are afraid to go outside over there. People are afraid to walk down the street with their children. People are afraid
just don't want to anyway.
Exactly.
If you
People
were.
are slaves to their addictions and to their sins.
Yeah.
And then I'm somewhere else where it's like, okay, someone could argue that the government is more heavy-handed in regulating these things for sure. But in a sense, you're more free. It's like, oh, I can wear my nice watch down the street here. I don't need to hide it away in my hotel room.
Zumi,
safe.
I want to have a great big fat steak. I want to have a cigar afterwards with a
Sure.
glass of whiskey. And I want to because I want to.
And someone wants to do their fentanyl and sniff their cocaine.
But you have to draw a
and-
line somewhere. And
Sure.
the rule we've had in this country since it began was all good things in moderation. We would say that fentanyl and crack cocaine are not good things, so we wouldn't even moderate them.
What do you think about cannabis? And
I would say that's not a good thing. But tobacco and alcohol, we've always
This is interesting because I've never smoked weed.
Right.
I don't drink alcohol and I don't smoke cigarettes. But I would objectively say that alcohol and tobacco are worse than cannabis.
In what way?
How many people have died from cannabis?
Well, their effect on society is
A lot.
I think,
lung cancer.
huge millions of people every year, millions objectively die from
The
cigarettes and alcohol. I'm not here even saying weed is good.
Death,
I've never
death isn't the only measure. The success,
overdoses, the impact, but the alcohol and tobacco, the effect on society. Like, I know people in Britain like to drink.
Yes.
And I'm not
I'm
here
not a big
saying
drinker,
I'm
so
not saying here saying ban alcohol, but
It sounds like you're saying ban alcohol.
No, but the impact on the individual and on society of alcohol consumption is enormous. I don't even know the cost to the NHS and the equivalent in other nations.
I'll get to it on the point of tobacco later. But
I think again, I have zero interest in weed. I've been to places again where it's totally legal. Everything. I hate the smell of it. I'm walking around
degenerate.
Nevada, LA, whatever. I don't like it. I'm not. But I find it hard to say that.
But weed stifles creation. Anywhere that there are mass weed smokers, like it's a lazy, lethargic society where nothing happens. Alcohol, all the best creators throughout history have smoked and drunk in moderation. All of them.
All the best, the best musicians in the world have done some pretty.
this wasn't meant to turn into a debate about
all good things in moderation. But
It is interesting.
Let's go back to where it started. 2007, the Labour government banned smoking in public places. Now, the Conservative government came in and they could have undid this. They could have said, we're a party for freedom. We believe in people's liberties.
Well, they could have modified it in a sensible way. Again, this is very much one size for everyone, rather than this could be a smoking pub, this could be a non-smoking pub.
Yeah.
What they did instead was enhanced it. In 2015, they said, we're creating a smoke-free generation and tackling youth vaping. Essentially, they said, the next generation will never have a legal opportunity to smoke.
And that's why there are no vaping shops all over the country.
Well, indeed. I suppose there must be more money in vaping now than there is in tobacco, because vaping is allowed and tobacco is being outlawed. But the smoke-free generation, the idea was it would come into effect in 2027, so that people who are 15 now will never be able to buy tobacco when they turn 18.
Interesting. See, this is so interesting. Like, because I think something that's happening anyway with the younger generations is I think they're dabbling perhaps in certain types of drugs more, maybe cannabis being an obvious one, but they seem to be smoking and drinking considerably less
Yeah, they definitely
than previous generations.
They're not picking up their parents' vices, are they?
No.
Creating new ones of their own. I mean, just as a quick thing, I've smoked cannabis, and The problem that you have with it isn't the immediate physical effects, but it's the same thing with alcohol and tobacco. It's not immediately dangerous to your health. Over a long period of time, it is deleterious to your health. In very much, it's worse than tobacco for your lungs, for example. Right? It does more damage. But that's not really the issue. I think South Park actually really hit the problem with cannabis really hard on the head, which was it makes you okay with being lazy.
Right.
It makes you okay with being unproductive. And so, like, there is some truth in what you're saying. Is that, you know,
I think I'm against
alcoholics are not uncreative, and they don't.
Yeah.
You know, it's not.
Medicinally, it's great for certain like cancers and things. It's really helpful.
But you are also right that they're still all vices.
Yeah, they are. I'm very much opposed to all of them, but I'm certainly not in the camp of everything I dislike and oppose should be banned.
But the nature of this country has been anti-puritanical. Like,
yeah, and you are right in your position where things that aren't immediately harmful should be done in moderation. So this comes back to your why can I smell cannabis smoke everywhere? Because it's not being done in moderation. You know, there's no sort of social norm around it because it was illegal for such a long time, and I think should remain illegal actually.
Yeah, there's something that's interesting as well, which is, you know, we're obviously going a lot wider and more philosophical on this conversation, but we've got three intellectuals here. We should, you know, there's something interesting as well about laws, and I don't have a conclusion on this. You know, you'll often hear the term that you can't legislate morality, which is
that's not true.
Kind of a weird one.
We do legislate morality all the time.
Should be based in morality, really. Yeah. But also, it's like laws also inform morality for millions of people, as in suggesting what is and what isn't okay. Yeah. Right? People generally assume, oh, okay, well, if something is legal, or especially if it's gone from being illegal to being legal, it's sort of a suggestion or a nudge that it's okay, or it's not that bad, or it's, you know, you see it all the time online. Normalize this, normalize that. It's like, not everything should be normalized, actually.
I once spoke on my Common Sense Crusade about holy matrimony, marriage being between one man and one woman, and anything outside of that is sinful. And someone said, how can you say homosexual marriage is sinful? It's legal. Yeah. As if the conflation there between legality and sin.
That's a great example.
Do I go to jail if I murder my neighbor's dog?
Yeah, because all the...
You know, like, it's still wrong.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you know, adultery is legal.
Yeah. Completely.
It didn't used to be.
Right, that's true.
It's still a crime in many nations. But you know, it's like, oh, and so there are people, like, it might sound weird to us, but there are people who are like, oh, well, it's not, as long as it was consensual, right? You end up with that consent-based morality on everything, where it just becomes, oh, well, as long as it's consenting adults, then have at it.
Right.
And it seems like every Western nation has slipped into this trap pretty hard in the US and Canada, Australia, UK, where it's kind of like, oh, was anyone hurt? Was it consensual?
And I hate that argument, because someone's always hurt in sin. You personally are hurt. Your soul is hurt, but also the collective body of Christ is hurt. So there's no sin where nobody is hurt. So that libertarian argument of let them do whatever they want, they're not hurting anyone, they are hurting someone.
Yeah, and you know, when you have a society that is strongly and solidly rooted in Christian principles, then people understand that.
Yeah.
And you know, I put out a tweet, I think it was last year, and it went viral. Actually, I was expecting to get way more pushback on it than I did. Like, when I put it out, I was like, oh boy, some of my followers are gonna get really mad at this. But actually, people understood what I meant. So of course, I'm a British citizen. I grew up in Saudi Arabia, lived in the UK for a long time, for 20 years, went to school here, went to university here. I recently moved back to the Middle East, which was a very conscious decision. I could live anywhere. And I tweeted that despite living in an Islamic country, I said something like, being in a Gulf country, and in an Islamic country, specific ones, you know, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, I said, it feels more Christian in a way than being in Western society. And I think maybe I put a caveat, and I said, not in terms of the people's theology per se, but in terms of the way they actually live their lives, and the things that people promote, and the things that they oppose, the things that they support, the things. And so, like, when I'm in Dubai, it's just like all of this stuff, like all of the extreme hedonism and degeneracy, and let's trans the kids, and let's do this, and let's parade this, and you just go there, and it's all just dead in the water. No one supports it. It's just, it does, even regardless of their faith,
So this is interesting because when you said you were moving to Dubai, my initial response was, I thought he was Christian. Why is he moving to an Islamic nation? And so this kind of answers some of that question.
It does, and it's so family friendly. It's so pro-family. It's so pro-social. It's pro-life. Very pro-life country. And people are just living and getting on and being normal. And 20% of the population is Christian. In fact, I think the second biggest Catholic, what's the right word? Not denomination. Is it parish? I think the second biggest one in the world is in UAE.
Really?
Yeah. St. Mary's Catholic Church is gigantic, over thousands and thousands of congregants. The church I go to there is like 100 times the size of the church I go to in the UK.
Oh yeah,
it's thousands of people because it's 90% of the population is expats.
Yeah.
So you just have people from all over the world. So you've got people from African nations, Asian nations, Europe, North America, all over, and everyone it's just very normal. That's the thing I perhaps appreciate most about it. I like not paying taxes, but I really like the fact that it's just normal. All of that crap just switches off over there. No one is woke.
Yeah,
because so many people have even moved there just because they're like, I just want to be. I've come from Russia. I've come from the UK. I've come from. I just want to be somewhere normal and
an
sane.
important part of Catholic culture that's missing.
But I hate to drive this back to the subject.
Yeah, let's do it.
Just real quick, because the first miracle Christ performed was to turn water to wine.
Yes.
This is why we've always loved wine. We can't live in a world without it. But I've been told you want to talk about some kind of donate button.
Oh, yeah, we have a donate button on the website. So if you appreciate what we do, go over to lotus.com and donate to us, because of course we've been demonetized and we rely entirely upon you, and we're very grateful. So thank you.
Thank you. Now, this is the Conservative policy. Once Labour got into power, what did they do? Did they undo it? Of course, these uni parties back each other up. The Labour Party backed this up in the King's Speech at the state opening of Parliament last month and promised to reintroduce the last government's legislation. So they promised to follow through with Conservative legislation, which would outlaw the sale of tobacco to anyone born on or after January 2009. If you wanted more evidence of a uni party, there it is.
Yeah, what would you look for if not this? They're all following exactly the same policy.
I mean, I won't even scroll down because it's just depressing.
Yeah.
But what we saw, there should be a video popping up. What we saw on Twitter today is that Keir Starmer has outlined why he wants to do this.
Yeah, he was very specific, wasn't he?
There we go.
It's being reported that you're looking at tighter restrictions on smoking outdoors, pub gardens, outdoor restaurants, outside hospitals and so on. Is that something that you are considering?
My starting point on this is to remind everyone that over 80,000 people lose their lives every year because of smoking. That's a preventable death. It's a huge burden on the NHS. And of course, it's a burden on the taxpayer. So yes, we are going to take decisions in this space. More details will be revealed, but this is a preventable series of deaths, and we've got to take the action to reduce the burden on the NHS and reduce the burden on the taxpayer.
You said when you became Prime Minister you wanted politics to tread more lightly on people's lives. This is the opposite, isn't it?
I think it's important to get the balance right, but everybody watching this who uses the NHS will know that it's on its knees. We have to relieve the burden, and that's why I spoke before the election about moving to a preventative model.
Right, so I'm just going to stop him there, because that really highlights exactly the problem with this country. We've got such a large administrative state that requires such a large tax burden. His problem is balancing the books.
Yeah.
He's actually not concerned really about your health, which is a perfectly valid way to look.
That's not even truthful.
Yeah. No.
So in the last year, 2023 to 2024, tobacco tax duty receipts in the United Kingdom amounted to approximately 8.8 billion British pounds, compared to 10 billion pounds the year before. Now, what do you think the tobacco problems and diseases cost the
80,000
NHS?
deaths.
2.4 billion.
I was going to say a couple billion.
So actually, smoking is a net positive for the country.
For the NHS in
Right.
particular.
The NHS,
Right.
yeah. If they were serious, again, I always say if they were serious, like they'd be talking about obesity.
Yeah.
But they don't want to offend and upset people. But if you want to talk about something that's like seriously impacting the NHS, you'd be talking about that. You'd probably also be talking about the fact that people are not reproducing enough.
Exercising enough.
Yeah, but also, I have this conversation. My dad's been a medical doctor for 50 years, and he's first worked with the NHS in the 1970s. And it's really interesting. One other thing, I love many things about my dad, but he's just so like frank and honest. And he says, he's very clear. He said one of the things that is, it's a good thing, but it's also an issue that people are just living longer. So he was like, back in the 70s or in the 80s, he's like, I'll see a patient now who might be in their late 80s, their 90s, and before they would have just died by now. And now they're coming in the hospital and they have 7, 8, 9 different chronic issues, and that is costing a huge amount. And when you have this socialized healthcare system, especially when you don't have a lot of young people who are coming in and supporting it, then it gets very top heavy and it gets very expensive, and it's just like, we can't do this thing. It's like when I talk to my American friends or even just people who want to have something like the NHS in the US, one of the reasons it wouldn't work is simply because the population is so unhealthy. If you had a generally
50% obesity, isn't it now?
Yeah, it's 42% now, heading to 50 in the next decade.
Well, there we go.
So it's like, if the population were generally healthy, you could consider it. But
Norway or Sweden or something.
Yeah, I was just in Sweden last week. Very healthy population. So it's like, whether you are for or against it, it's almost irrelevant. It's just like, it won't work because it would just be so egregiously expensive because people are so unhealthy, and you have 350 million of them. So yeah, it just won't work. There's one more point actually I wanted to make on this, and perhaps it's the most important point, because I was talking about the sort of libertarian instinct. And I'll tell you, despite hating smoking, massively advising against it, the biggest reason, I guess my best argument actually against this would be, when you're making new laws and creating bans, most people don't think about it this way, but you have to think everything is ultimately enforced under the threat of violence. So when it comes to things like this, I really have to kind of go back to that principle and think, am I okay with people potentially being arrested, forced to the ground, thrown in prison, and so on for doing this thing?
And he is.
And I'm like, no, right? Someone's smoking a cigarette outside in a park. Am I okay with the force of the police, real boots on the ground coming in? No, actually, I'm not okay with that. I think that would be a horrible idea and a massive misuse of police resources. So
he's a tyrant. So both of his main points are undermined. He said the NHS, we've discussed, it's a net positive actually to smoke, but also he said it's a preventable death. So heart disease, kidney disease are in the top 10, far above any tobacco-related disease. Is he going to clamp down on drinking? Is he going to clamp down on sugar? No. Abortion kills 250,000 people per year in this country. That's the biggest cause of death. Is he going to ban abortion? Of course he's not.
Of course not.
He's a massive tyrant. But on the issue of smoking, before we move on, I will just say, you can buy a Common Sense Crusade pipe on the Lotus Eaters store.
Which you should, because they're awesome. But I actually personally do smoke, but I also don't recommend someone takes it up. You'll never get it off your back, to be honest.
I'm going to whip through some of these because this topic's gone on a bit, but some of the other stuff that the government has tried to ban in recent years. Wet wipes. I thought that was ironic because they're kind of banning themselves, really. Single-use plastics. This one really riles me up because plastic straws are important for people with disabilities and the elderly. And actually, as a result of banning plastic straws, we've seen companies like Starbucks and Nero use more plastic in their lids. Actually, more plastic than the straws would have been. So it's counterintuitive.
Do you know what's coming to my brain? How many of those disposable plastic masks that they force on billions? How many of those things must just be?
I just want to say I'm kind of in favour of it as well, because I hate plastic as a material.
Plastic is horrible.
It's a horrific material.
But they don't do it in a good way. No evidence for the government's plastic straw claims. This is a Channel 4 fact check. They're on the government's side. So it doesn't
literally state-owned.
Right. It doesn't help the environment, and it's actually detrimental to the disabled. Charging for plastic bags in supermarkets. Okay, so plastic bags kill turtles. We want to stop people using plastic bags. But if I pay my 10 pence, I can kill a turtle. Is the message that they're sending.
But is it really our plastic bags that kill the turtles? How many turtles are there around British beaches?
I can afford a lot of plastic bags, so I can afford to kill a lot of turtles.
And I do want that.
It's not good.
Yeah.
The junk food ban. I won't play the video because of time, but they tried to ban junk food. I'm sure Zuby will be all over this one. They tried to ban sauce sachets in restaurants. They tried to ban cheese adverts because
Cheese
is
adverts?
apparently unhealthy.
What?
Cheese is lovely and it's good for you.
Cheese isn't unhealthy.
Yeah, why would they think cheese is unhealthy?
That's not even correct.
They banned the Beach Body Ready advertisements.
Oh, I
at the
remember.
same time
I
as-
remember that so
as
well.
allowing fat people on adverts. What message are they trying to send there? And of course, they banned black cabbies from flying their own national flag.
Amazing.
Is that because it's racism or?
Yeah.
But the question is-
because it's racist.
When does this nanny statism turn into tyranny?
I would say at the beginning of it.
Again, I won't play the video for time, but they tried to ban social media during the recent riots. They said, let's ban it during the unrest. Yes, a temporary measure in a government. Always a good thing to do.
Yeah, and for anyone, well, that was just a TV segment. Yeah, it was a TV segment hosted by the husband of the current Home Secretary.
Do you know something
One of many.
Do you know something that's really, really interesting with all this? And I've got my philosophical hat on today, and I think you guys will both, you guys will both definitely understand what I'm saying here. I think that this ever encroaching nanny state is absolutely inevitable when all of the other things that keep people in line and ethical and moral are eroded. Faith, family, community, all of these things that act, because if you think of it in your day-to-day life, you don't generally conduct yourself based on what is legal and what is not.
Yeah.
You have other laws and moral codes and things that are instilled in you from childhood, which generally guide your behavior. So I think as those things are eroded away intentionally or unintentionally,
This becomes necessary.
it becomes inevitable that the state is going to keep on encroaching more and more, saying, okay, we have to kind of treat you like children and tell you what to do and what not to do. And people will also demand and accept it more.
100%.
So
Why a state religion is a good thing. A shared moral compass.
Oh, okay. When you said state religion, I didn't know what you meant.
That the new state religion is the state, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think, when you look back, obviously the USA in its early days had its issues, but I think because of the shared familial and moral and so on codes, they were able to just have very few laws. Like in the US at the beginning, they had very few laws. It was kind of just give everyone a gun and you police yourselves. And then as time goes on, this federal government in particular just grows and grows.
You are right. I think it's correlative with the dissolution of morality in the populace itself.
Yeah.
So
It's going to be enforced from somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is backed up by what we saw over COVID.
Yeah.
The fact that the government wanted to ban collective worship. They banned people from meeting in pubs. They essentially banned assembly, the freedom of assembly.
Can I propose a law?
Yes.
When I say a law, I mean sort of in the Newton style. You know how they say energy cannot be created or destroyed?
Yeah.
I think the same is true of power. It just moves around. If you take it away from the individual and it goes to the state, or you take it away from God, quote unquote. Like I don't believe you can actually take it away, but you do that, and it's like the power is always there.
Yeah,
the
I agree.
authority is always there.
Christ says
just
to the
where it
leaders that
sits.
You get no authority that my father doesn't grant you. So he permits leaders to have authority, but all authority comes from him.
Ultimately.
From a political science perspective, power is like a liquid. It's always in flux. It's always flowing. You can never just amass power and keep it. It's always, you're either gaining it or losing it, but it's never stationary. Yeah. So you might well be right on that.
I think so. I think it just goes somewhere else. Like I give up this power and I'm granting it to this other entity.
Yeah, no, I think that's
and so on. I don't think you can just decrease the power overall.
Yeah,
you just shift where it sits.
And this lines up with what you're saying, because as we move away from one state religion to the state as a religion, they're banning the old religion. So we're seeing the banning of silent prayer
of
in
course.
certain places. We're seeing the banning of what they call conversion therapy, which is
you praying in your head?
right, having conversations or prayers with people.
Yeah.
Wait, what's this one?
So this was conversion therapy. They wanted to ban conversion therapy, which essentially means if someone comes to you and says, look, I might be trans, for you to have a conversation that dissuades them from that, you are converting them. Therefore, that's illegal.
The craziest thing is this is so Orwellian because the actual conversion therapy is
the transition
hormone
itself
treatment and sex change surgeries, and like that's actual, by definition, conversion therapy.
Yeah.
The way they use language it's scary.
But the most important ban we've seen in the last 20 odd years is the guns.
Oh yeah.
The UK government took our guns away in 1997 following the Dunblane incident, which was an awful, awful incident, a mass shooting, but it didn't stop mass shootings. We've had 7 mass shootings since then. Taking people's guns away doesn't stop people using guns illegally. It only stops us defending ourselves with guns.
What were the laws? I'm too young to know this. What were the laws before that time? Before
I actually don't know
96? I know it wasn't the same as US where it's just like, but what were the laws? What did you have to do to own a gun?
It was still quite stringent at the time. I can't remember exactly what
It's probably similar to the way they are now, because we actually do still have millions of guns in the country. They're just in the countryside, shotguns and rifles for hunting or whatever. And you've got to jump through a load of hoops to get one.
Yeah.
So it was probably something similar.
I think it's for sport, for work, or for leisure, but you have to own an estate or a regular user of an estate. But this is why the Americans kept their guns, because there is no freedom of speech, freedom of association without a freedom to bear arms.
Yeah. Trade-offs, man.
Yeah.
It's really what it is. And I think so many of these issues become such hot button political and culture war things because a lot of people don't want to accept that trade-offs exist.
Yeah.
I'm very much pro Second Amendment for the USA.
Yeah.
But the truth is, of course it results in more shootings.
But the Second Amendment defends the
But also... Yeah, exactly. But I think people want to pretend there's no trade-off there. Yeah. And it's just like, no, there's a trade-off. Whatever side of this you're on, you have to be honest.
You get more of what you permit, as you mentioned at the beginning with the
I think that's also a great example of the concept I was saying just about power. So it's like, okay, someone's going to have guns.
Yeah.
Right? No one's... I've made this point before. No one is actually anti-gun.
Right.
You people debate on who should have them.
Yeah.
There's no police force in the world or no government force that does not have firearms. They're going to have them. It's just, should citizens be able to, or to what degree, or which ones?
The good guys have them too, or
Exactly.
just the bad guys. But all of this comes down to our choice between freedom and safety.
Yeah.
Pretty much everything we've discussed, which all comes to say, bring back smoking in pubs. That's what all of this was about, essentially. Venues should have the right to decide whether people in their venue are going to smoke or not. It has nothing to do with the state, nothing to do with anyone else.
And you can just put a sign outside. This is a smoking pub. This is a non-smoking pub. Use at your discretion.
Yeah, let people, the private owners, make their choices.
I hope you appreciated that segment from the podcast to the Lotus Eaters. And if you want to see what else we're putting out, here we have a roundtable on the riots in England. And this is a premium video for subscribers. And if you are interested in supporting us other than subscribing, you can also donate. And if you want to see all the work we're putting out, we also post links to that on Twitter. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.